Okay, welcome folks to my next build. This one is going to be focused on the Sirin FPV flight controller. This whole build is an excuse to put this flight controller into a copter somewhere. The Sirin has a built-in video transmitter, and it's got SD card logging for black box, and it's got an OSD built in. It's a Betaflight OSD, so it's configurable via the Betaflight configurator. And I just don't know what there is to not like about this flight controller. Well, the price, it's like $100. So that's kind of expensive. If you buy premium parts anyway, then you could probably get to $100 buying all this stuff separately. But there are many options on the market right now to get this all functionality for way less than $100. But if you want to put this on a copter, what better copter to put it on than this frame? This is the Orion frame from Flynoceros. At least I think it's the Orion frame from Flynoceros. Josh Ingram actually handed me this in a parking lot. It sounds way more clandestine than it really was. No, when I went out to San Antonio for business and I met the guys out there, Josh Ingram of Flynoceros, he apparently lives out there by sheer coincidence, and he said to me, "Hey, you want to frame another frame?" Yes, absolutely. Do I ever say no to that? And he handed me this. I've looked on the website, and I believe this is the Orion, but if it's not, I apologize. So then I just sort of looked all through my shelves to find what else I could put on here. These are rotorgeeks motors. They're the 7075 aluminum. They're the 2350 kV version. These are super nice motors, don't get me wrong, but they definitely are not on the cutting edge of motor tech. The things that we've got now, like the 0.15 millimeter laminations on the windings, I don't even really know what that means. The N52 SH magnets, the arc magnets, the low arc gap, and all that stuff that you find in the really hot motors now that are making like 1,300 grams of thrust, you know, off of 4S. These are not them, but these are really solid motors. I've been flying the 2700 kV version of this motor. Maybe it's 26, I'm not sure. I've been flying that version on my main freestyle copter, the QAV-R, for 6 months now. They're still in really great shape. They're really smooth. They've been bashed up and beat up, and I like them a lot. This would not be my first pick if I were buying motors today for a racing copter, but they're sitting there on my shelf, and they're in this nice box, and they're very nice motors. They will not go to waste on this build. For camera, we've got the Foxeer XAT600. This is my go-to. It's an 1177. It's my go-to camera. It has been for a long time. Some version of it, whether it's an 1177 or an XAT600 or a Rose by any other name. This one does come with the 2.8 millimeter lens, which is not my first choice. I would prefer either a 2.1 or a GoPro lens, and I may be swapping that out depending on how much flying I do on this copter. But yeah, it's a solid choice. And then for ESCs, now I'm doing this ESC. This is a 4-in-1 Hobby Wing Xrotor ESC. And my first thought was, oh, it's an Xrotor ESC. Okay, so you got to flash that to BL Heli. Because the Xrotor ESCs, they used to come, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to come with Xrotor firmware on them, and you could flash them. They were to BL Heli, and the performance was good with the Xrotor firmware, but it got better with BL Heli. Except I went to flash them, and that's not a Scilabs chip. That's an ARM chip. So I don't know exactly what chip it is. I don't think you can put BL Heli on this. I'm sure the performance on this will be okay, but I prefer BL Heli because I want the latest and greatest as the developments of BL Heli come out. For example, BL Heli S is going to be supporting a new thing called D-Shot, digital protocol between the ESC and the firmware, between the ESC and the flight controller. Well, if this was a BL Heli S ESC, I would have a good chance that I would be having that sweet goodness, that sweet digital goodness in sometime in the next month or two. But since this is not BL Heli, it will never run D-Shot, probably. So if you want to do a 4-in-1 ESC, I would suggest getting something like the Cicada 4-in-1. I think there's even a 35 amp 4-in-1. I'm not sure if it's the Cicada. There's maybe a Racer Star. Do a search. There's some very good BL Heli S 4-in-1 ESCs in the price range of about $50. This one is about $50. And I think there's probably, even if the performance of this is spectacular, I would probably rather still have a BL Heli one. That's what's going on in this build, and let's get to it. And some people would criticize me for only putting 2 screws in, although it's never been a problem for me. But I noticed that the way the frame is cut, you can't actually get the other 2 screws. That's cut. I don't know, it's the way the motor holes are aligned or whatever. I can't put more than 2 in, so it's really not an option. And some people will criticize me for not using a Loctite, which there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But again, I keep the screws snug, and it's never been an issue. I know that other people have had motors come off. I don't know what's different about what I do. Maybe I just check my screws more often to make sure they're tight. I don't know. But it's never been an issue. And so I'm just going to keep doing it the way I do it. Okay. Okay, got that done. Motors, done. Yep, the Sirin does take 5 volts. And actually the guys from Sirin have said that you really want to make sure your 5-volt regulator is up to snuff. You generally, they said, you do not want to just use the 5-volt regulator on a PDB like this, or you want to use a good quality like Pololu. But this one is supposedly rated at 3 amps, and I'm willing to take my chances that we're going to stay. If it's rated at 3 amps, the actual rating will probably be less than 3 amps. The effective real-world rating. 3 amps is probably just a paper rating. But I'm willing to take my chances that we're going to stay under. I think I think it pulls something like a few hundred, like 800 milliamps or something. I'm not sure exactly. But I'm going to take my chances that we're going to stay under that. I think we'll be alright. If we're not, then we'll get brownouts and the copter will crash, and then I'll fix it. Now this ESC comes with, this is an output for, I think it's for VN and I don't know what else. VN current sensor, it's got a current sensor output, I guess. Would have to have a shunt resistor. I don't see a shunt resistor. Well, anyway, it's got an output for some stuff, and we're not going to use it. And then this is a connector for the motor outputs. Or maybe that's the other way around. I'll have to look. It doesn't matter because I don't suggest you use this one anyway. Many of these 4-in-1s will have an output, nice four-way plug, and some flight controllers have a nice input, so you can hook the ESCs up to the flight controller just with one simple plug. It's very nice and easy. Somebody saw me doing this on a live stream and said, "Brilliant!" So, look, tweezers, and then you go, and you dig through your screws. Oh, I guess we got to decide where the front and the back is going to be. So here's the camera. I see. It's going to go like that. Great. And so there's going to be front to back that way. So we're going to have this come out the back. Which side? And I better make a note of which is 5 volt and which is 12 volts. Oh yeah. It's $12, $15, something. You'll be glad you got it. Once you have a label maker, the world is your oyster. These wires always come tinned, and I sort of don't understand the point of it, because it's not like you're going to not re-tin them. It's not like you're going to go, oh, well, a factory tin was just good enough, so no problem. I'm going to take a lesson from the armadillo build. I'm going to put this plate in place before I run my freaking ESC wire, so that I make sure that I'm running it in a way that will make sense when it's all said and done. I did that on the armadillo. I ran the ESC wires nice and tight, and then when I was done, the side plates trying to crush the wires, and I had to, yeah, it wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. twisting this to keep it neat, but also so that if at some point in the future I need extra slack, I've got it. I'm not at all paying attention to which motor wire I'm soldering where. This has software reversing, so I'm just going to use the software reversing later to reverse the wires. Now the Sirin is interesting. We can either put a SMA connector on here, which no, don't do that, or you can put a pigtail, which is what I'm going to do. Not actually sure where I'm going to mount the freaking video transmitter, but okay. Here's the forward-facing arrow for the Sirin, and I guess it's going to go like that. It's going to go like that. And I suppose we could put the video transmitter like here, perhaps. So we're sticking out the bottom somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a loop of wire. Yeah, no sense keeping it ultra short. I can always try and find a way to secure the loop later if I have too much. Make sure to get all those little fibers in your copter. That's ideal. I'm not thrilled with how close the solder is to the braided foil, to the foil sheath. If that contacts, we're going to have a problem. But I think it's going to be okay because that's not going to move. It's just going to sit there. There is a gap. Let's just check for continuity real quick and see. So we got ground here. Okay, so ground from there. Do we have to connect continuity to the signal? And we do not. There's no continuity to the signal between ground. No continuity between signal and ground. We can also do that same check here. Just touch the pin. No continuity. So okay, yep, we pass. It's really close, but I don't think it's going to make contact. It has enough distance, and it's not really able to move and make contact in any way that I can imagine. Now then, here's the Sirin. I'm not thrilled that the SD card is in the back right here. You can see that's going to be a little annoying to get at. I mean, whatever. It's not the end of the world. I wish it was on the side. I'm half tempted to turn it to the side so I could get at it easier, but then the USB port is going to be in the back. There's no real great solution there. The other thing I've noticed, and I hate this, I really hate this about this board, I just noticed it. This is the bootloader pad right here. On the bottom of the board, by the way, I assume it's the bottom, the silk screening is here, and maybe, I don't know which is the, I think it's the bottom, because the silk screening is here, so that presumably that's the top. So, okay, maybe it's on the top of the board, but I think it's on the bottom. But then, it's behind the freaking SD card reader. So, like, if that's in a stack with something on top of it, like a VTX or something, you're never going to be able to get it. The guys who design boards, the bootloader, whether it's a button or pads or whatever, must be accessible when the flight controller is in a stack. Assume that you have, 5 millimeters of clearance below and above, and make sure that people can get at it. Is that hard to do? Maybe it is. You only got so much space to work with, and you got to fit everything in. But that's why I'm not a board designer, and you are. You gotta do it. The bootloader has to be accessible. And I know you're sitting there going, "What do you mean? I don't have to go into bootloader." You don't have to go into bootloader mode when you flash. You can sometimes you get away with flashing without going into bootloader mode. Sometimes you don't. It depends. And just because it always works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me. And you never know. I never want to have to tear my copter open and go into the stack just because I want to flash a new freaking firmware. That's unacceptable. Unacceptable. Okay, so we've got 5 volts, ground, and VBAT coming in here. Very clever the way they've done that. All together. The other thing on the Sirin I noticed, speaking of motors, is I don't think the motor numbering is correct on the Sirin for clean flight. The Sirin has, this is the front arrow, so front is here, so it's 4, 3, 2, 1. If that's the front, then 4, 3, 2, 1 is not correct. So if you turn it around, is it correct? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think so. I don't think that's correct either. Clean flight order is 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't see any way to make this be correct for clean flight. 3, 4. Oh, that's how it's correct. Okay, so now it's time to solder up the motors. This is the output from the 4-in-1 ESC. It's got a ground wire and 4 signal wires, which are confusingly, two of them are white, so that's confusing. I'm going to assume we had ground, and then there was a 5-volt power wire, which I'm not going to use because I might have used it if I had realized that I didn't have to pull straight from the 5-volt regulator. But seeing as could be pulling a couple amps, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not using it. So we've got a signal ground, and then I guess it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. These wires aren't long enough for me to bring everything in from the side. I would like to pass everything underneath and bring it all in from the side so the whole thing will lift off and fold over. They're not long enough for me to do that though, so I'm going to rely on the fact that I can just unplug this connector if I need to take the flight controller off. The other thing is that the motor order for the ESCs, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, but the problem is that it's so dumb. I think the ESCs go 1, 2, 3, 4, and clean flight goes 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's annoying. Also, the Sirin, the only way that the motor's order works right for the Sirin is if you flip it upside down, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, which is correct. I don't know. It's very confusing. It's basically just a freaking crapshoot if I get the motor order correct. And now this is coming in from the same side as the SD card reader, so that's too bad. I'm going to be pulling on that every time. Dang nabbit. Dang nabbit. So annoying. It has to go that way, otherwise the motor order will be weird, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to frickin' wire it up and then cross my fingers that I've got the right order. And then, ta-da! Finished copter! Yay! Wasn't that easy? Yeah, what followed was a whole lot of screwing around and trial and error trying to get the motor output of the 4-in-1 ESC to be correct. So basically I went to the motors tab in Betaflight and I spun the motors up and they were out of order, and I made a note of, you know, this one needs to go here, this one needs to go here, that one needs to go there, and then I just resoldered them all and I did it again, and it took me like 2 times of doing that to finish it and get it right. But then it was finally right. And then I went for my first few flights, and like on the 4th battery pack, flying just straight and level, the copter, I think it had a brownout or something, I don't know, and then so it crashed, and then after that, now this motor doesn't spin correctly, so I think the 4-in-1 ESC bit it. I don't know, I haven't got around to fixing it yet, but let's pretend that all didn't happen and look at this wonderful build. Isn't it nice? 430 grams all up weight with I think it's a 1300 milliamp hour battery on it. Super light build, very clean, not much to it, right? Look at that, look how nice that is. It's not bad. The Flynoceros frames they're kind of annoying. They're great for what they are. They're very light. They're strong. They probably race really well. I'm not enough of a racer to really say, but they're super annoying for little details like this. Like, I think there's even a V2 of this frame that has a mounting bracket for the antenna, but like, why would you make me do that? I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter, but it's super annoying to me. I like things to be a little neater than that. This is clever here with these bull horns here. I thought at first they were cosmetic, but in fact they're to protect the camera, which, as you can see, if you buy this frame, get these freaking Taurus horns or whatever they call them, because otherwise your camera is just going to be hanging out in the middle of freaking nowhere, and it is going to get ripped off and break. Like, there's just no two ways about that. The other thing is, with this is a super tight build, and there's like 0 options for, look, I cannot change the up tilt of the camera really hardly at all. Now some of that is because the Sirin forced me to flip it over halfway through if I didn't want to do a custom motor mix, so my front became the back. You can see here, notice how the battery is going out the front. Well, that's because I had to flip the Sirin over, and that turned the front of the copter into the back of the copter. But never mind that. There's very little flexibility with frames like this. You kind of stuck with what you got, and at the end you have a frame. It's 430 grams, goes like the Dickens, but boy, it's really, this is not a general purpose frame that I would recommend to like the average person, especially not for like your first or your second build. You really got to know you want this to be happy with it. The 4-in-1 ESC, man, I'm not even sure it made my life easier. If you don't have a flight controller that has an input for a 4-in-1 ESC, so you can skip soldering and you can just take the motor connector out and plug it right in, man, don't even bother. I don't know. And even then, a lot of times the motor order is not right, and you got to pull the pins out and shuffle them around, and that's a hassle. And then when you're done, one of them takes a dump, and you replace the whole thing. And this is a $50 piece, which, thank God someone gave it to me instead of me buying it, or I would be really sad right now. Because I have to replace, if indeed it is the ESC that's making this motor not spin right, and I think it is, it's just done. I got like 4 flights on it. So if you buy a 4-in-1 ESC, don't buy this Xrotor 4-in-1, because number 1, it doesn't run VL Heli, and that's not good, and number 2, in a sample size of 1, it lasted like 4 batteries before it seems to have taken a dump. So anyway, don't buy that one. There you go. That's the build. I like the Sirin, despite the fact that I had some criticism of like the way it's the silk screen is on the bottom and the motor order is kind of weird. Despite all that, I like it. I've just done a bunch of research working on a roundup of all-in-one flight controllers, and its feature set of Betaflight OSD plus SD card plus video transmitter is pretty hard to beat, especially since it's all in one board. You get all that in one board, and you have a 4-in-1 ESC, and you're done. You have basically everything you need in 2 boards, and that's pretty cool. Is the Sirin the absolute best first choice? Well, you can have to wait for my flight controller roundup, and you'll see. But that's coming. There's this build, Orion, etc. Got to get the ESC fixed before I can show you any flight video from it. And as busy as my schedule is, I'm not actually sure how long that's going to take. So anyway, there it is, though. Hope you liked it. Happy flying.